Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're going to have a look at what is happening right now with the Navy SEALs. Now, to start this program off, the Navy SEALs training program, especially BUDS, the Basic Underwater Demolition School. Very rigorous, and it has to be. And just like the Navy SEALs, there are other special operations groups in the United States military, the Marine Raiders. You have the U.S. Army Delta Force. So again, in order to produce the highest quality, the most elite fighting forces in the world, you have to train these forces. And the training is incredibly tough. And there is going to be casualties, injuries, and even deaths in these training programs, unfortunately. Now, here within the United States, those deaths are very, very small when you consider how many personnel go through those training programs. Now, one issue in particular is the investigation that is underway of the Navy SEALs, and I'll read you this headline. Investigation launched after death of Navy SEAL candidate prompts overhaul of how Hell Week training course is monitored. Now, get through this with me and then wait till the very end, and we're going to find out the real reason, unfortunately, why this prospective Navy SEAL candidate perished after training. Not in training, he got sick, but let's read this. So inadequate medical screening and uninformed medical staff contributed to the death of Navy SEAL candidate hours after he completed a brutal part of the training course known as Hell Week, a Navy investigation found. But again, wait till the end, please. The investigation prompted an overhaul of how the Navy monitors one of the most brutal and demanding processes. It found that the medical support for the basic underwater demolition sea, air, and land course was poorly organized, poorly integrated, and poorly led. That's tough, wrote Rear Admiral Peter Garvin, the commander of Naval Education and Training Command. The lack of proper medical care put candidates at significant risk. Garvin also said the additional accountability measures are necessary in the wake of the failures that contributed to Mullen's death. According to Navy official, Garvin recommended considering accountability actions against approximately 10 personnel. A Navy Regional Legal Service office is reviewing the investigation and will make recommendations about accountability. The official said, after which the command will decide what actions to take. The training and selection course is designed to push SEAL candidates to the limit and beyond, creating an environment where only the most qualified and capable will finish. But Garvin said there must still be effective risk management to prevent injuries and illness during high-risk training. In February 2022, Navy SEAL candidate Kyle Mullen had just completed Hell Week and underwent a final medical check before he went to rest at his barracks. So he completed Hell Week, got through. The investigation found Mullen had suffered respiratory issues during the arduous training, but information about the symptoms was not passed on to the Navy's medical clinic, leading them to conclude he was not at risk. 8 hours later, Mullen was pronounced dead. In the hours before his death, Mullen was coughing up an orange-red fluid and having trouble breathing, according to the investigation. Even as he repeatedly refused advanced medical care, he appeared to be choking on his words and gasping for air as if he was drowning. But the personnel assigned to check on Mullen and other SEAL candidates, known as watchstanders, had no medical or emergency care training. Candidates going through Hell Week are normally given a form of penicillin called Bicillin at the start of the course to reduce the risk of bacterial pneumonia. But the investigation found Mullen never received the preventative medication, likely because there was a shortage at the time. There was a shortage at the time. So look, a Navy SEAL spends a significant amount of time in the water. The waters around the Coronado military base. The Special Operations Command implemented a procedure by giving the sailors this medication to prevent pneumonia. But they didn't have the medication. So is this a question of the training regiment? Or is it the question of the supply of the medication that had prevented some of these sailors from getting this pneumonia? Because it's part of the mission, they have to be in the water. They're Navy SEALs, for Christ's sakes. So knowing that, they were giving these sailors this medication. So was the cause of the death of the sailor the training regiment? Was it the inadequate medical supervision? Or was it the real cause, even at a higher level, not providing that medication because of supply shortages? So what do you do if you're the SEALs? You have to produce these elite warriors. And you can't necessarily, especially cease fire on the training regiment in terms of having them operate in the water. That's what they do. And in all likelihood, because there's that inhalation of water while you go about the process of training in the water, getting wet, it caused the sailor to get pneumonia. And it's incredibly unfortunate. Please understand, this sailor, made it through Hell Week with pneumonia. And in all probability, we've been one hell of a sailor being able to, one hell of a SEAL, to be able to persevere through Hell Week with pneumonia. But what was the cause? Is it the training or the inability to give this guy that antibiotic, which he probably should have received, which probably would have saved his life? It was a supply shortage. Very unfortunate. And yes, there is the possibility. I think you have to definitely look at the medical personnel, the training of the medical personnel to monitor and then report on what the symptoms are of these sailors. But ultimately, if he would have got that medication, if he would have received that medication, that Bicillin, he's probably alive to this day. Probably. But again, you you have to have this sort of training. And there's going to be failures. There's going to be errors. There's going to be things that happen within the training that's going to cause, unfortunately, accidents that happen. But if you want to produce the ultimate fighting force, the very best, you have to train like you fight. Beyond like you fight. You have to do it. And you can't necessarily have this one incident, look at it, and make major changes to a very, very successful training program. Very successful. So I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to get your thoughts. Please respond in the comment section. Tell us what you think. Again, incredibly unfortunate that this young sailor lost his life, and again, in all probability, would have made one hell of a warrior for the Navy SEALs. Supply shortage. Have a good day.